Look how many grown men were in the street to celebrate the Milwaukee Bucks winning the NBA Finals. Look how few men were in the street to protest the government closing down commerce, gyms, and forcing their college-bound kids to inoculate against their will. A doomed society.
It's a game. Football's a game. Football's a game. But let me tell you something. When 150 of the most powerful men and women in the world can meet in secret in Baden-Baden, Germany, and plot the fate of billions, and nobody even cares about it. But 6 football players go to lunch together, and it's in the headlines across the country. You have a reflection of the society in which that exists. And it is a sick society that is doomed to self-destruction.
So based on that scenario, there's some truth into what these men are looking at.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me so sick, is that I'm trying to wake up a people who on a daily basis are proving the ones that I'm warning them about to be right.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that even though a minority, there are people out there that you recognize are awake to this, if they don't do something about it, they will lose that ability to be free in that way.
That's correct.
Whether they might think, well, I don't need to worry about it because I know what I know and I'm fine.
That's
it doesn't
right.
work that way. There's a connection here to everything.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. A nation of people who are willing to send their sons and daughters that they profess that they love to a foreign country to die, and they use the excuse to themselves that they're sending them off to defend our country, and they know damn well that's a lie, are doomed.
Listen, I love the NBA more than most, and I'm very happy for Milwaukee, but this is fathers and grown men in the street celebrating a basketball game, yet when Marquette University will require students to be vaccinated against COVID-19 for the upcoming school year, which means forcing, coercing, or kicking out thousands of kids who don't want to get it with their personal choice, or Wisconsin schools requiring masks on children, forced masking when even the CDC says it's not necessary for certain students, nobody really cares. Isn't that a little bit weird? Bill Cooper called this out decades ago. Take a watch.
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. And he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets, and they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. Sad. It's really sad.
Is there any room in a kind of society where these manipulations are not taking place for this type of entertainment or any type of entertainment at all?
If people understand that a game is a game.
I think there's something profound about saying when you know what a football or basketball player is eating at lunch and millions of people are paying attention, but you don't know when the world's most powerful people are at conferences, sometimes in secret, and a lot of this stuff is out in the open and nobody even pays attention to it. Some people are curious how I know certain things. I just listen and pay attention. I mean, some of the world's most powerful people meet at Davos and pretty much broadcast exactly what they're thinking, exactly what they're planning, and it's not not even a secret anymore, but most people are too preoccupied with the culture to even care about their own freedom and future. Bill Cooper was a radio broadcaster, an author, an ex-military member, and what they would call a conspiracy theorist. But I'll let you listen to some more of that clip because a lot of what he said rings true today. Take a watch.
And that means you can't rely on the media as it is today either.
Oh, of course not. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors.
Can you name those 5 corporations? Is that...
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I could try, but I don't want to take a chance on being inaccurate. But you can trace that yourself.
Okay.
Remember, if you go down and you trace the ownership of a station or a newspaper, and you get to a corporation, remember that somebody owns that corporation, and it's usually another corporation. But when you trace the interlocking of all these things, when you get to the top, there's 5. And all journalists know that there's some things you don't write about, and you don't talk about, because you'll lose your job. And that's where the control is. And that's why they pay anchormen like Dan Rather $2 million a year, because he doesn't question them. He knows that if he goes against them, he's going to lose $2 million a year. Do you think a man that looks pretty and sits in front of a TV camera for the 6 o'clock news is worth $2 million a year? No way.
There's a time and a place for sports. I love playing, I love watching, but when the streets fill with tens or hundreds of thousands of people to celebrate other men playing a game, but the streets are empty, when the free market in your country was destroyed and you were told to stay in your house as they shut down beaches, parks, gyms, health facilities, things that keep you healthy, and convinced you that it was for your health and nobody cares, there's something a little bit weird about that. And the NFL will never be the same. I already reported on the 2-tiered status if you get vaccinated or unvaccinated, and if you're unvaccinated, you're losing your freedom to things like social media marketing, using the sauna, eating with certain people. I mean, you're pretty much a second-tier citizen, a slave, peasant, or serf if you decide to go that route, but they made it even harder and put even more guilt on players by saying the NFL threatened forfeits for teams with COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players. So notice that wording. If you're vaccinated and there's an outbreak, they don't care. They're only putting the blame on the unvaccinated. Let's read. In a memo issued to teams Thursday, the NFL said if a game is unable to be rescheduled during the 18-week regular season window due to a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team experiencing the outbreak will be forced to forfeit the game. That team will also be responsible for covering lost revenue for that game. Meanwhile, neither team's players would receive their weekly game checks. So now they're making it almost impossible to be unvaccinated because you're not only going to blow it for your team, but their salary, and everybody's going to hate you. So they're making it harder and harder. But I guess if there's an outbreak among the vaccinated, they don't care because it's about equality and virus and protecting your health, but they only seem to care if there's an outbreak among people who didn't get the jab. And it's not just the left wing and liberals pushing this ideology anymore, it's also freedom fighter heroes like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Take a look.
So here's, I think, the most important thing with the data. If you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, the chance of you getting seriously ill or dying from COVID is effectively 0.
Now, maybe that's what his data is saying, but this idea that you have virtually 0 chance if you get the vaccine is interesting considering I just read 151 dead, 563 hospitalized in Illinois breakthrough COVID cases. They're telling us it's a unicorn after 151 people died and more than 500 were hospitalized in Illinois due to what they're calling a breakthrough case of fully vaccinated people. Israel says Pfizer COVID vaccine is just 39% effective as Delta spreads, but still prevents severe illness. So pretty much everybody's admitting, regardless of the different data that certain senators, governors, and health experts say from different countries, one thing is pretty clear. You could still catch COVID if you get the vaccine. You could still die if you get it. And the fact that the NFL is saying you're going to screw it up for your team if you get sick with COVID only if you're unvaccinated, and they don't penalize you the same way if you do catch COVID-19 after you get vaccinated, just shows who these people are becoming. Vaccine supremacists. They're becoming full-blown psychopaths who, I'm just warning people, will want to treat you like a slave, peasant, serf, and second-tier citizen if you choose to reserve your right to refuse the double mRNA jab that to be fair, is still not FDA approved, despite how much the press secretary lies about that, and how much Facebook tries to penalize me for saying that truth, and how much NPR defames and libels me, mistelling the story, trying to say I lied when I actually told the truth about that, and they're just being a PR team for the person who actually lied about it. So, and I don't know if they think I'm too stupid to pay attention to the news, but within the last week, Johnson & Johnson was part of a $26 billion opioid settlement where they paid $5 billion for a settlement that alleged that they helped fuel a deadly nationwide opioid epidemic. Pfizer recalled Chantix due to cancer-causing chemicals. Within the last few weeks, pharmacies pulled J&J sunscreens off shelf after carcinogen found in some sprays. September 2nd, 2009, Justice Department announces largest healthcare fraud settlement in its history. Pfizer to pay $2.3 billion for fraudulent marketing. Reuters from 2012, Pfizer settles foreign bribery case with U.S. government. Pfizer has agreed to pay $60 million to settle a U.S. government probe of the drug maker's use of illegal payments to win business overseas. Reuters, December 2018, Johnson & Johnson knew for decades that asbestos lurked in its baby powder. Knowing that these companies have no liability for side effects, injury, or death with their new product. Last year, we had a record number of overdose deaths. We have an opioid and overdose crisis, which is pushing the life expectancy backwards in our country. I used to read articles about the flu vaccine in Scientific American that admitted that it was routinely off the mark because with different type of variants and mutations, it was hard for the experts to actually guess which one it would be in that hemisphere. And these social media companies know if anybody slips through the crack, does the real research, and reports the things that they used to report that now they act like don't exist, like the far from flawless track record of these companies. Facebook admits that it will censor content that's factually accurate if it causes people to be what they call vaccine hesitant. So even if you educate people with real information, real facts, real articles, real data, real truth, real FDA approval process, real everything, if it doesn't just make people slobber all over the jab and want to force vaccinate their neighbors and create a two-tiered society where you can't even access public facilities if you don't bow down to the yearly booster, then you're the problem that needs to be censored. This is how sick, authoritarian, and disgusting these sites have come. Everybody, Republican and Democrat involved in this, should be absolutely ashamed with themselves. And just a reminder, you're only fully vaccinated until they tell you you have to get the booster shot, in which you're not fully vaccinated anymore, and then you have to go get the booster. And if it's anything like the flu vaccine, you'll be getting it every single year. And if for some reason you decide to opt out for whatever reason in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road at this rate, you're eventually going to not be fully vaccinated. And are you going to forfeit your rights and freedoms because of that? This is unprecedented. This is not normal. In my perspective, this is not healthy. And I find it shocking that people care more about concerts and basketball games than they do about their own children, their own freedom, and their own future. And this is coming from somebody who loves basketball, plays basketball, watches basketball. I'm not acting like I'm holier than thou with watching sports. I love sports. I'm just saying it's time for people to think about other priorities, because eventually you're not going to even have the lifestyle that you had a few years ago, and all of these things that you once enjoyed are either not even going to be possible or going to be so regulated and a shell of what they once were, it's not even going to be fun anymore. Let me know what you guys think. God bless you, and have a beautiful day. I'll be back with more videos soon. Thank you to everybody supporting on Patreon. Thank you to everybody checking out my hats at godblesshats.com. Thank you to everybody on my Telegram chat, Dream Rare Chat, and I'll be back soon.
I'll be independent. I like my amendments. I don't want to bend it. I don't want to sentence. I am on a vengeance. I will not regret it. I am not defenseless. All my friends protected. Yeah. We let the enemy get too friendly. Now we quarantine like Julian inside the embassy.